Next up, we have Dan Michelson and Althea Topek of Smith College presenting a workflow for accessioning non-permanent college archives records. Smith College Archives is tasked with storing both permanent and non-permanent records created by the college. Dealing with non-permanent records presents unique challenges that their existing workflows did not address. To maintain consistent metadata regarding the college's retention schedule and to streamline accessioning practices for both non-permanent records, they developed a method to maintain physical and intellectual separation of permanent and non-permanent records. Document the scheduled destruction date as consistent metadata and easily maintain container control through unique top containers and indicators. This presentation will discuss Smith College Archives workflow for accessioning non-permanent records in ArchivesSpace and initiate a larger community conversation on managing non-permanent institutional records in ArchivesSpace. Althea is the accessioning archivist at Smith College Special Collections. She manages the intake of all material into the Sophia Smith Collection, the Smith College Archives, and the Mortimer Rare Book Collection, and works to make this material promptly available to research use. Dan is a project manager archivist at Smith College, where he is responsible for leading the Access to Collections A2C project to improve and standardize description and management of the holdings of Smith College Special Collections. He is vice chair of the ArchivesSpace User Advisory Council and the immediate past co-chair of the Society of American Archivists Technical Subcommittee on Describing Archives, a Content Standard. Dan has a BA from Hampshire College and an MA in Archives and Public History from New York University. And he's previously held positions at Union College, the Hagley Museum and Library, Michigan Tech, and New York University. Again, if you have a question, feel free to type it into the Q&A at any time, but we are going to go ahead and hold the questions until the end. So Dan and Althea, if you'd like to take it away.
Great, thank you. So I'll get right into it. So since 1987, Smith College Archives has been responsible for overseeing the disposition of college archives, or college records, according to the records management policy. Of course, this includes retaining permanent records, and it also includes providing temporary storage for inactive non-permanent records. Some of you might be able to see where this is going, but it does not have authority to actually dispose of non-permanent records past their scheduled retention without permission from the originating office. So you should definitely be able to see where this is going now. In addition to the inherent problems with having responsibility without authority, there was a fundamental problem with our accessioning process of treating permanent and non-permanent records the same. At least formally, there was presumably less time spent on them, but that is hard to determine. So I'd like to give some context before we get into detail. So in 2017, Special Collections moved to temporary quarters during the library rebuild, and we're actually returning this June. By this time, 30 years of accessioning without authority or necessary staffing to be able to dispose of non-permanent records had left a large but vaguely defined backlog of non-permanent records. The Access to Collections project, which involves a wide range of sub-projects to improve access and control of archives and rare books in Special Collection, started in summer 2018. And some of the most urgent work of this group was addressing the needs of college archives. So the first step was to address the more of the low-hanging fruit. This would be the clearly identifiable non-permanent records from cooperative offices. By the end of fall 2018, roughly 500 linear feet of non-permanent records were destroyed with the authorization of the originating office. I'm not going to go into detail here, but as an example of the fundamental transformations in the management of college archives, we introduced a collection numbering system in the winter of 2018 to 19. At the end of August 2019, the accessioning archivist retired, and a member of the A2C team took on interim responsibilities as we looked for a replacement. In December, the College Archives Collection Control Project, which has one of my typically wordy project titles, got started. This included identification of the remaining non-permanent records. Since we wanted to make sure that our solution for handling legacy non-permanent records wouldn't limit the future accessioning archivists' options for managing them going forward, we delayed adding these records to ArchivesSpace. In July 2020, Althea was hired as the new accessioning archivist. I think a pandemic may have happened around here. I don't really remember. So when Althea started, College Archives was in the midst of an enormous transformation, but the accessioning workflow for non-permanent records had yet to be defined. And with that, I will hand it over to Althea.
Thanks, Dan. So accessioning college archives material can pose unique challenges that may not surface while accessioning manuscript collections. At Smith, the college maintains a records management policy, and we in special collections use this to help guide the disposition of incoming college records. So the RMP helps us determine the specific record type of a new acquisition, which then helps us determine the retention rule mandated by the college. So both of these types of information need to be documented at the point of accessioning. Special collections has specific access policies for college archives materials based on the assigned retention rule, and these need to be clearly documented within the accession record as well. Because permanent and non-permanent records have separate dispositions, access restrictions, and retention, they need to be physically and intellectually separated for ease of use and collection management. Non-permanent records have a destruction date that needs to be documented, and all incoming material needs reliable container control and file level description, even if it's not permanent. Next slide. So while we were thinking about folding all of the unique information into our accessioning workflow, we considered our internal needs as a special collections department. The most important aspects of our accessioning workflow needed to include methods to responsibly steward the college's records and methods to create consistent metadata for archive staff, as well as the Office of Origin. Our primary goals for stewarding college records are to maintain physical control, destroy the records in a timely manner, and input file level description in ArchivesSpace at the point of accessioning. But we, as archive staff, really need consistent metadata to be able to identify and locate boxes that are ready for destruction. If we have consistent metadata in our ArchivesSpace instance, we can locate these unique boxes by running SQL queries or reports. And this consistent metadata also eases the process of updating our enormous finding aids that have file level description. So our workflow really came down to finding a way to implement the addition of consistent college archives metadata in the accession record, the resource record, and in the top container indicator. Next slide. So our workflow really starts with adding 3 types of information to the accession record at the point of accessioning: the general record type and the retention period that's mandated by the college through the RMP are determined immediately, and these are both added to the retention rule field. An example of this would be general record type, comma, projects, programs, proposals, retention period, comma, permanent. This language is taken directly from the RMP by the accessioning archivist, and it's also confirmed by the college archivist. Special Collections has an internal document that lists our college archives access policies. This content for the access restrictions note can be directly pulled from our internal document. Access policies can be dependent on the length of a restriction. So while permanent records have a variety of access notes, all non-permanent records are restricted and are only open to archive staff or the Office of Origin. It's important to note that all incoming college archives material, both permanent and non-permanent, receive these determinations in the accession record. These 2 fields in the accession record not only help us manage all college archives material, but they provide transparency for how retention and access were determined during accessioning. So if anyone has any questions on why something's permanent or why it's restricted, there's a clear documented path to that determination. Next slide. So during accessioning, more description gets added to the resource record. And this is to make sure that we have file level description in ArchivesSpace for all college archives material. When non-permanent records are needed by either the Smith College Archivist or the transferring office, they're usually looking for a specific file and not necessarily an entire accession. So it was really important to us to be able to search for file titles in years. Description for permanent college records is added to the finding aid wherever it's most appropriate, similar to regular processing. But for the non-permanent records, we actually started adding a specific unpublished non-permanent record series as a place to nest our non-permanent file level description. And this is really where the easy maintenance comes in. We can easily find and delete this description after destruction without really having to change the rest of the finding aid. And like I said earlier, our college archives finding aids tend to be rather large. And this non-permanent records series is unpublished because all non-permanent records are restricted. So accessions are nested as subseries within the non-permanent record series, and they receive a component unique identifier that corresponds to the accession number. So we can easily find specific accessions. The accession subseries record also receives an appraisal note that includes consistent metadata on the record type, transferring office, and date of destruction. It's really this appraisal note is what we're looking for when we need to locate boxes for destruction. And we can run SQL queries and reports every year to locate which accessions can be destroyed based on the year listed in this note. We also add an extra label to the appraisal note, scheduled destruction date. And this is just an added element to be able to search for destruction date information in ArchivesSpace. So the file level description then gets imported into each accession subseries. And now I'll turn it over to Dan to talk about top containers.
All righty, thank you. So there were three primary objectives we had for container control. First, we needed to be able to clearly distinguish permanent and non-permanent records when using the ArchivesSpace Manage Top Containers view. This is why we needed the series level component unique identifier of non-permanent records, in addition to having the title be non-permanent records. Second, we did not want to renumber more than 800 boxes of non-permanent records that we will be sending to our new offsite storage facility pending permission to destroy. Third, we wanted to be able to create top containers in bulk for the legacy accessions rather than putting in file level inventories. The final objective was achieved thanks to a Python script written by A2C team member Claire Marshall, who has recently left to join the Newberry Library. And this link is available in the slides when they go up. So now I'm going to pause the presentation and show you what we came up with, and actually log back in. So we do, when we're trying to find boxes, this is usually the view we're using. So I'm going to show the class themes, which is by far our largest collection of material that is non-permanent. So many of our, we're trying to get away from this practice, but traditionally accessions had numbers that would repeat for each accession. These are what you're seeing now are the actual permanent records, and you can distinguish the multiple box ones by under the series that has the accession number. As we go further down, you can see we haven't entered the container information for these yet. We get to the non-permanent records. So clearly says non-permanent records, that's helpful. But we need to actually have it say the accession because there's a whole bunch of box ones. So what it actually looks like in the accession record is we cheated a little bit. We don't include the container type and we just put the whole thing in the indicator. And then we would add the normal profile and barcode when we get to it. So this way we actually have it in a consistent way. Should there be some sort of change in ArchivesSpace in the future, we can always go back and, because it's consistently done, make changes in bulk. I will bring us back to the presentation.
So we've made this documentation available. Smith College Special Collections publishes all of our internal documentation on a wiki page. This link is to this specific accessioning workflow. And we're interested in hearing any feedback from you all on how other institutions manage college and university records with special needs in ArchivesSpace, or if you feel that there are any features that could be added to ArchivesSpace to help promote records management. But in addition to our questions for you, we're also taking questions. So thanks.
Thank you, Dan and Althea. That's great. Yeah, so please feel free if you have any thoughts to drop them into the chat or the Q&A. And of course, once we move on from presentation to the next presentation, that conversation can continue, or you can email Dan or Althea. We do have a question in the chat for you from Marcella. You don't include non-permanent records in your public finding aid. How do staff and other departments know what non-permanent records from their departments are housed in your archive in case they need to access those records? Or just curious.
I can take that. So they traditionally, the individual departments, when they send us records, they're actually very good at sending us a file list as they exist in tables. So they tend to know what they're looking for because they sent it to us. And so that's sort of, we're not expecting that they're going to be wanting to search their own records in general. It is, they need a specific piece of information and they're contacting the archives. So that's the thing. And then the staff can search internally using the staff interface.
Thanks. Do you apply this methodology to non-permanent records that are held by other offices on campus?
This is for all, any records that get sent to us. That are non-permanent follow this process.
Thanks. All right, we have a few more minutes. So if you do have a question, please feel free to drop it into the Q&A now, or if you have an answer or would like to offer feedback to Dan or Althea, please feel free to do so. A question in the chat. Do you keep any residual metadata of the records you destroy?
That is in part a question that we don't get to answer much because we don't destroy a lot yet. But we do have, there is a formal process for documenting records destruction. And I don't know off the top of my head what exactly that is, but there are some, there is documentation of what is destroyed.
Thanks. Do you have non-permanent records that you can or might become permanent? And if so, what's the sort of special workflow for that?
I don't know, Althea can a bit. I would say that that is the determination that would be made by the accessioning archivist in incoming records, and for legacy records, potential is sort of we're having the college archivist sort of confirm that things are in fact non-permanent as they appear to be based on the records management schedule. But once something is classified as non-permanent, I don't believe there shouldn't be a reason that it would become permanent that I can think of.
Yeah, I think at the point of accessioning, when the college archivist confirms the retention period, you know, obviously something that the college deems as non-permanent, we can deem as permanent if the college archivists would like us to permanently retain those records. But I can't think of an example that it would come up years later.
Thanks. Yeah. All right, we've got one more minute and one more question. So can you very quickly answer how our requests, retrievals, or searches handled?
It is, I'm not sure either of us can answer that because Althea hasn't been here when we've had on-site public service, and I haven't been doing it. But I mean, it is treated like it's, you know, really any other reference request. I imagine there might be a higher priority placed on internal stuff, but
Yeah, right now it's handled by the college archivist.
Great, thanks. All right, so we are at time. We did just get a question in the chat, but maybe Dan or Althea, if you could type an answer there so that we can keep moving. A question about the location field in ArchivesSpace. And then also we have another question in the chat asking the link that you had on your slide. Could you drop that into the chat? Of course, all slide presentations will be made available in the wiki in the days to come, but of course you may want to look at it now while you're thinking about it. So if Dan or Althea, if you could drop that link into the chat whenever you get a chance. And with that, we're going to go ahead and keep things moving.